And we are back with another episode of The Franchise here on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Today's March 3rd, Friday, and in this episode, we're going to take a look at both the American League and National League Central. We're continuing to work our way through every single MLB division before the start of opening day. Today we got both of the Central divisions in Major League Baseball. We're also going to talk some more NFL draft. The NFL Combine is currently going on, and we're only about a month away from the NFL Draft. And we're going to talk some LeBron and the Lakers, as LeBron is out multiple weeks with an injury. See really what is going to happen. What does it mean for the Los Angeles Lakers and their playoff hopes? As I mentioned, the franchise is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Let's first start with LeBron and the Lakers. LeBron hurt his foot against the Dallas Mavericks on Sunday, I believe it was, and he's going to be out at least 3 weeks minimum. The Lakers are going to reevaluate him in 3 weeks to see if he's going to be able to come back this season for a potential playoff push, or if they're in the playoffs to at least go out there and try to make it to the NBA Finals and ultimately win a championship. So how are the Lakers going to do in these possibly 3 weeks to a month, potentially the rest of the season without LeBron James? Well, first, the Lakers have been great since the trade deadline, right? When they acquired D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt, and Mo Bamba, this team has been playing some great basketball. They moved from the 13th seed in the Western Conference all the way up to the 11th seed. They're one game out from the play-in spot right now. They're one game behind the New Orleans Pelicans, and they play New Orleans, I believe, in a few games. So I think this Lakers team could be fine without LeBron. Obviously, LeBron, in my opinion, is one of the top 5 to 7 players in the world. He's the greatest player of all time, in my opinion. And when LeBron is on the court, the Lakers have a chance, and whatever team he's on has a chance of winning every single night, right? But when he's not on the floor, especially during his time with the Lakers have really struggled. Remember that first season when they had Lonzo and Brandon Ingram, he missed significant time. The Lakers fell out of the playoff race, and then there was the past few seasons. If he's missed significant time with an injury, the Lakers have really underperformed. But I think this year, with this new roster that they built and put together at this NBA trade deadline, I think this is a much better group, and a group that can win some games without LeBron. Now, if they get to the postseason, and let's say it's a first-round matchup against the Denver Nuggets or the Memphis Grizzlies or the Golden State Warriors, without LeBron, I think they lose. Now, if they were to play the Sacramento Kings, I think the Lakers would beat the Kings. That's a different topic, but I think throughout the regular season, throughout this, there's only like 20 or so games left in the NBA regular season. So I think we can definitively say LeBron is going to be out for the remainder of the regular season. And if the Lakers put themselves in position to either make the play-in tournament or to actually make the NBA playoffs, LeBron will be well rested up into that point to where he actually has to play in the games that really, really matter. Now, right now, every game for the Lakers matters a lot, as they can't afford to lose games at this point in the season. But I do like this Lakers team, even without LeBron. I think if AD steps up, he needs to play like the former MVP, top 5 player in the world that we all thought he was when he got traded over from the Pelicans. And I think the addition of Jared Vanderbilt is one of the most underrated moves of the NBA season. This guy provides amazing defense and an elite rebounding ability. I mean, he had 17 boards in that game against the Dallas Mavericks. He's able to just, read what passes are coming and steal the ball. He provides elite defense and vision and spacing. I think he's one of the best pickups, the Lakers have made in the past few seasons. I love Malik Beasley. He's a great scorer, and D'Angelo Russell, I think, is really, really fits what the Lakers are trying to do this season. So LeBron, hopefully he comes back before the postseason, because if the Lakers make the playoffs and he's and he's not healthy to come back, I think they're really going to struggle in the postseason. But the rest of the regular season, I think the Lakers will be fine without LeBron. But they do have a very tough next 10 games against some pretty tough opponents. There's some winnable games in there, but there's some games against the Grizzlies, Warriors, Pelicans that are definitely going to be tough for the Lakers. And then real quick, I wrote this down. I was going to talk about this a few days ago. There's rumors about James Harden going back to the Houston Rockets. This is really interesting. This is actually really interesting. Remember, these rumors first came out, I think it was at the start of the season, when it was James Harden's eyeing a potential return to Houston. And then those rumors kind of went away. And then this past week, they came back up again of James Harden and the Houston Rockets. They're a serious... the Rockets are a serious contender for James Harden, and that's a real possibility that he returns to Houston, where he spent so many years of his career and played the best basketball of his career with the Rockets. Now, Houston's the worst. They're not the worst team in the league. That's the San Antonio Spurs, but Houston's like the second or third worst team in the game right now. I mean, their guys they don't have any real talent on this roster. Jalen Green has shown flashes, but he's very inconsistent, and I don't think he's the kind of guy that you can build a squad around to win a championship. He just doesn't seem like that kind of player. And then you hear what John Wall said in interviews, like this team is not well coached, they're not well disciplined, and they kind of just do like whatever they want. Now, they have a real potential chance of landing the number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft, and if they do that, they're getting Victor Wembanyama. And this Victor Wembanyama guy, if you don't know, he's arguably the best draft prospect since LeBron James. He's 7'6", center who can stretch the floor, shoot the 3-ball, and has elite ball handling skills. He's like the Kyrie Irving of 7-footers. I mean, he is an absolute talented player. The only concerns for him are his frame. He's a very skinny, very very skinny player, and we'll see how he handles and holds up when he gets to the NBA. But right now he's projected to be the number 1 overall pick. He's been projected the number 1 overall pick for like 3 years now. So whoever lands that number 1 overall pick is going to draft Victor Wembanyama. Now, if it's Houston with Jalen Green, with potential cap space, with a lot of draft assets that they got from trading James Harden, and then if they had Victor Wembanyama, there is a real chance that James Harden, returns to this Houston squad. Now, I don't think they would win any championship. Maybe they make the postseason, but that's as a play-in team. I think the Western Conference is way too competitive that, if James Harden comes back, this team will be better than they are now. But just because you have Victor Wembanyama and Jalen Green and picks and cap space and James Harden, I don't think that team's any better than like the 9th or 10th seed in the Western Conference. If I'm James Harden, I stay in Philadelphia or I go to a contender. The Lakers are going to have cap space. Maybe he goes to the Lakers. There's going to be a lot of teams this offseason that will have cap space. Now, if James Harden doesn't want to return to Philly, I don't think Houston's the greatest option. But Victor Wembanyama, we'll have to talk about that guy soon. I mean, he's supposed to be the greatest draft prospect since LeBron James in the last 20-plus years. I have my concerns about him. I have the urge to say I don't think he's going to be that good, and I wouldn't draft a number 1 overall. Because if I'm right, then that looks awesome. Because every single person in the world is saying that this guy is going to be the greatest player, of all time. All right, moving on. We got NFL draft. There's been a lot of talk, and it's gonna keep happening until either they trade the pick, or we get to draft day in over a month, and they select someone at number 1 overall, and that's the Chicago Bears. And what are they gonna do? We've talked about in the past them potentially trading that pick, because this draft has 4 first-round quarterbacks in this draft class. C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis are 4 guys that are going to go in the top 10 of this year's NFL draft. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And the Bears hold the number 1 overall pick. And the reason this is so interesting is because the Bears have a quarterback. I mean, you could say they have a franchise quarterback on their roster, and that is Justin Fields. In 2021, his rookie season, he didn't play great. He didn't pass a lot. He just wasn't a productive player. That was under Matt Nagy as head coach. Not a great coach. But this past season, with a new head coach, new system, he showed a lot of flashes of success. He rushed for the most yards out of a quarterback in NFL history, multiple rushing touchdowns. He had flashes with his arm too. He showed on film, great deep ball accuracy, great accuracy out of the, as a quarterback. He threw great balls. He wasn't just a run first quarterback. So he showed a lot of potential to be a franchise quarterback for the Chicago Bears. So that's why it's bringing up the question, what do the Bears do? I mean, do they believe Justin Fields is their guy? Or are they going to trade that pick? Because, look, they have the number 1 overall pick. They can draft any of the players in this pool. But if they have their quarterback in a draft class like this, where there's 4 quarterbacks that could go in the top 10, they're not going to draft. It'd be foolish of them to draft a non-quarterback with the number 1 overall pick. I mean, if you're going to draft, there's so much defensive talent in this draft as well. I mean, Will Anderson and Jalen Carter. If the Bears want to draft one of those guys, it makes sense for them to trade down to a team like, at 4, at 5, at 6, a team that is going to end up trading up and drafting a quarterback. But it's not definitive that the Bears are keeping Justin Fields. And this guy at ESPN, I'm forgetting his name, he has been the sole voice for this trade Justin Fields and restart the quarterback clock for the Chicago Bears. Now, Justin Fields, he has 3 years left on his rookie contract, assuming they pick up the 5th-year option. So you have 3 years of a window of a quarterback window of him on a rookie contract. And the Bears, they have the most cap space this offseason. But I mean, if the Bears aren't sold on Justin Fields, and they like one of these 4 guys, let's say they love Bryce Young, or they love C.J. Stroud, or Will Anderson, or Will Levis, or Anthony Richardson. If they like one of those 4 guys more than Justin Fields, you're looking at a chance of a potential, the opportunity of the Bears drafting one of these guys at number 1 and trading Justin Fields. And, he brings up a great point. If you draft one of these guys this year, you're restarting your clock of a quarterback on a rookie contract from 3 years to 5 years. You gain 2 extra years of a quarterback on a rookie contract, which saves you cap space, is maximizes the ability to have roster flexibility and to build a championship-winning team around said quarterback. I think it's a real possibility. Now, Adam Schefter says the Bears are likely to trade this pick, but I mean, the Bears have said they're going to do their work. They're going to scout these quarterbacks. And if I'm the Bears and I say we're moving on from Justin Fields, let's say they come out, if I'm the GM and I'm like, you know what, we're moving on. Justin Fields is a great player, but I like this quarterback better. I think you have to take C.J. Stroud number 1. I think he's the best quarterback in the draft, and I think he's going to be the best pro quarterback. I mean, over his 2 seasons at Ohio State, 2021, 44 touchdowns, 72 completion percentage, 4,400 yards. Last season at Ohio State, 41 touchdowns, 3,600 yards, 66 completion percentage. He's accurate to all levels. He's consistent. He has an arm. Now, he's not the most mobile quarterback in this draft. In fact, he's probably the least mobile quarterback out of the top 4. Right? He doesn't possess that rushing threat ability that a guy like Bryce Young or Anthony Richardson or Will Levis or even Justin Fields, who's on their own roster. He does not possess that dual threat ability. But as a pure quarterback, I think he's easily the best in this class. And I mentioned that earlier this week. I think C.J. Stroud, for me, is the number 1 quarterback in the draft. And number 2, I mean, I'm really between 2 guys. That's Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson. Now, I don't have Anthony Richardson's numbers written down here, but, his numbers, his box score, his stat chart doesn't really display his football ability. I mean, his numbers were not as impressive, as the film. His film is incredible. He's the best athlete in this class of any position. He's the best athlete in this draft class. He has elite arm talent, he throws the ball extremely hard. And he's easily the best dual threat quarterback in this class. And Bryce Young, I mean, he's been the best quarterback arguably in college football. I think it's C.J. Stroud, but Bryce Young's been the second or third best quarterback in college football over the past 2 seasons. won the Heisman in 2021 with 47 touchdowns, 4,800 yards. Last season, took a step back, 23 touchdowns, 3,300 yards. Great pocket presence, great touch, timing, and vision. The only thing for him is he's about 5'10 to 6 foot, and he's 190 pounds. So the frame for him is the thing. But, I mean, it's going to be really, really interesting to see what the Bears do, because they're in a good, tough spot. Like, they have a really tough choice to make, but I guess it's a good thing to have, because this is a great problem for the Bears. They have a quarterback on roster that you could say is a franchise guy, and you have the number 1 overall pick. So whatever avenue they go down, they're going to more than likely improve this roster from last season, and they're going to be a better football team next year, and they have the most cap space in the NFL. So, we'll talk more about the draft, obviously, as we get closer. Mock draft will be coming out soon, the first one, and whatever else happens from the NFL Combine. All right, let's get to these MLB, AL, and NL Central previews. We're going to start with the American League Central. I'm doing both of these divisions in the same episode. First of all, these are arguably the 2 worst divisions in baseball. The NL Central in particular, I think, has the worst division. But we'll start with the American League Central. In last place for me this season, I have the Detroit Tigers. This arguably is one of the worst baseball teams I've ever seen. I think the Oakland A's this year are going to be worse, but this Detroit Tigers roster is about as bad as it gets. Now, they do have some pieces on this team that are some young guys that could be future stars. Starting with the lineup, Riley Green, the outfielder, left-handed hitter, was ranked the number 1 prospect in baseball last season. Projected 14 homers, 250 average. He struggled at times last season at the plate. And then the other guy in their lineup for them is Spencer Torkelson, the number 1 overall pick back in the 2020 MLB draft. First baseman, he's 23. Last season was a very, very tough year for him, but they're projecting 20 homers, 230 average. But you look at the rest of this lineup. Kerry Carpenter at DH, Javier Baez at short, Austin Meadows in right, Jonathan Scope at second, Eric Haas at behind the plate, Nick Maton at third, Spencer Torkelson at first base, and Akil Baddoo in left. The White Sox, I think, struck out bottom 5 or top 5 most times in MLB last season. And Javier Baez is one of the worst contracts in baseball. He signed a 7-year, $200 million contract with the Tigers back in 2020 offseason. And he's been horrible for them. Last season, he struck out a lot of times. He didn't play great defense. He's just not a great hitter. He's not a disciplined hitter. You look at the rest of this team, I mean, you're looking at a lot of guys who are not going to provide high averages. They're going to strike out. They're not going to walk. They're not going to hit homers. This is a team that is going to strike out and really not put the ball in play. And Miguel Cabrera is still here. He's going to be coming off the bench. He's 40, so I think this is his last season anyways. And then you look at the rotation. I mean, they're going to be missing their number 1 true pitcher, Casey Mize, the number 1 pick in 2019. I think he's out with Tommy John, but you look at the rest of this rotation. Eduardo Rodriguez had a down year last season in his first year with the team. Matthew Boyd, Michael Lorenzen. Matt Manning is a top pitching prospect. He has not been able to put it together during his time in the big leagues. And Spencer Turnbull. This rotation, all of them projected to have near or above a 4 ERA. And his bullpen is absolutely atrocious as well. Not the worst one I've seen. We've seen the Rockies bullpen and the A's bullpen. But this bullpen is pretty bad as well. I don't know any of the names in here except for Tyler Alexander, and he's projected to have a 4.5 ERA. They're going to be missing Casey Mize and Tariq Skubal. Both of those guys, I think, there's some really good young pitchers. There's some really, really good young pitchers, but the rest of this roster, I think, is absolutely horrible. This was a team last year that we were looking at this time last season as being a team that could potentially make the postseason. And now this team is absolutely horrible, and they're going to be buying for the number 1 overall pick. All right, coming in 4th place, I have the Kansas City Royals. I think this team is going to be very, very bad as well. For the Tigers, I project them to win 65 games max. For the Royals, this team's better than the Tigers, but they're still not, a great team. They're multiple years away from being a true contender. Bobby Witt Jr. headlines this team. Last season as a rookie, had his ups and downs. Looks like he's about to get a full season at shortstop for the Royals this season. Projected 29 stolen bases, 23 homers, and a 260 average. He has potential to be the best shortstop in the game and one of the great stars in baseball. If he can put it together this season, the Royals are going to be ahead of schedule in terms of their rebuild and into contention. MJ Melendez is another great player. He's a catcher, can play first base, DH, can even play some outfield. This guy's a 230 hitter that can hit 20 to 30 homers. He's going to be a big piece to this team. Salvador Perez, for some reason, he keeps getting ranked as a top 10 catcher when he's one of the worst defensive catchers at the plate. In 2021, he had a 40-homer season. I think he led baseball in home runs. In 2021, last season had a very down year. Back to a normal Salvador Perez type season. I expect him to hit 30 homers, 250 average. Vinny Pasquantino at first base. This is a guy that I didn't put in my top 10 first baseman. He was right on the border. I think by the end of the year, he's going to be one of the best first basemen in the game. He provides great power, great contact, great ability to get on base, and some great first base defense. Hunter Dozier at third, Kyle Isabel in center, Edward Olivares in left, Michael Massey at second, and Nate Eaton in right field. This rotation is very bad. It's absolutely horrible. The number one pitcher in this pitching rotation is Zach Greinke, who's 40 years old. And Zach Greinke throws about an 88-mile-an-hour fastball. Jordan Lyles is their number two. Brady Singer is their number three pitcher in this rotation. I like this guy a lot. He has potential. He has great stuff. He has potential to be a number one. If he can put it together this season and have a truly great season on the mound, you're looking at a true number one out here in Kansas City. Ryan Yarbrough projected to be their number four. This guy throws just as hard as Zach Greinke, and he's 31. And Brad Keller rounds out the rotation at number five. I like this bullpen. This bullpen's actually pretty nice. Scott Barlow, their closer, throws some heat, has some great stuff. 3.6 ERA projected. They have Aroldis Chapman. He hasn't been good in a few seasons. Amir Garrett, Josh Staumont throws absolute cheddar. And then Josh Taylor coming over from the Red Sox rounds out that bullpen. I think this team, it's going to be better than the Tigers. They have better offensive pieces than Detroit. I think Bobby Witt Jr., MJ Melendez, Pasquantino, you're looking at those guys being the leaders of this team. And for me, the X factor, if I was to point out one guy that's going to determine the success of this team, it's Bobby Witt Jr. He was ranked as the number one prospect, I think it was last season coming into the year, or number one or number two prospect in baseball, the best shortstop prospect in the game, and he's supposed to be a future star. He's supposed to be the best shortstop in the game in 2-3 seasons. He has all of the tools and traits to do that. It's all about him putting it together this season. So if the Royals want to have any success, I don't think there's any world where they make the postseason, but if they want to have success of winning like 70 to 80 games, 80 being they absolutely exceeded expectations, it's going to all lie on the shoulders of Bobby Witt Jr. These prospects for them are many years away. Their pick, Asa Lacy, this was a guy that back when he was drafted, I think in 2019, was a guy that you were looking at coming up very, very soon in their system, and he's still down there in the minor leagues, currently in Double-A. But I think you're looking at a ceiling of 72 wins for the Kansas City Royals this season. Last season, they won 65. So they're going to be improving, but they won't be in a playoff contention spot. Now, these next three teams in this division, the Twins, White Sox, and Guardians, this division can be really, really good if these three teams play like they're supposed to. These teams on paper are supposed to be really, really. They have a good roster. Each of these teams has good pieces on their roster. Now, if all of these teams play and exceed their expectations and they just play like they're supposed to, you have a chance for not only three of these teams to make the postseason, but you have a really, really tight AL Central divisional race. But then there's also the potential, like what happened last season, where two of the teams disappoint, and you have a very bad division. Now, coming in third place for me, I have the Minnesota Twins. They made some moves this offseason. They brought back Carlos Correa after he went to the Giants and then the Mets. They brought in Joey Gallo, Christian Vasquez at the catcher position. Go through the lineup real quick. Byron Buxton in center field. Carlos Correa at short. Jorge Polanco at second. Max Kepler in right field. Jose Miranda at third. Joey Gallo in left. Alex Kirilloff at first. Christian Vasquez at the catcher position. Nick Gordon, projected DH. They also have Kyle Farmer, Donovan Solano, Michael A. Taylor. I like this lineup. I think it's a pretty solid group. The only reason I have this team finishing in third place is, I know I haven't mentioned the pitching yet, and it has nothing to do with the pitching. It has nothing to do, with the decent players in this lineup. It's all about Byron Buxton. And you can't count on this guy to play 100 games. He hasn't played 100 games since 2015. I know last season he played like 90-something games, and he was great. He had 20-plus home runs, and he was one of the best players in the game when he's on the field. But I think you have to expect him to miss significant time with an injury. I mean, last season he missed there was multiple stints where he was out with injuries. I think you can expect the same. As much as it sucks to expect a guy to get injured, Byron Buxton gets injured multiple times this season since 2015. So I think with that, I mean, if Byron Buxton's out, you're looking at this lineup getting a whole lot worse. And Carlos Correa, he hasn't had injury issues over his past 3 seasons of his career. But that foot has been the reason that he hasn't signed with the Giants and the Mets. And for some reason, we're always concerned about him getting injured. And if he gets injured, if you're missing Buxton and Correa, this lineup is horrible. The rotation is nice. I like this pitching staff. Pablo Lopez, they got over from the Marlins in that Luis Arias trade. He's their number one. I like him. Not as a number one. He's a great 2 or 3 starter, but he's going to be their number one. Sonny Gray, he's been very solid over his time with the Twins. Joe Ryan, this guy is an absolute stud on the mound. Last season in his rookie year, played great. Projected to have a 4 ERA. Honestly, I think this guy is going to be amazing next season. Tyler Mahle at the 4 and Kenta Maeda at the 5. This bullpen's has some pieces as well. Johan Duran projected a 2.9 ERA. Jorge Lopez, Emilio Pagan, and Dennis Santana. Royce Lewis has been the top prospect in this system since he's been drafted in 2017. And he has been just as injured as Byron Buxton. So this team, if everyone's healthy, I think this team wins between 80 to 85 games. They could possibly hit 90. But I just think, they have some injury-prone players on this team. And if those guys get hurt, the team gets a whole lot worse. All right, coming in second place, I have the Chicago White Sox. Last season was a very, very disappointing season for these White Sox. They were projected by many, and I think myself included, to be the division winners and one of the favorites to go to the World Series. Well, last season they did anything but that, and they went 81-81 and missed the playoffs. I like this team. Now, they lost Jose Abreu, and they may have the bottom of the lineup may be pretty thin. But I think the rest of this roster, if all of these guys are healthy, which you can say that about any team, but if all of these guys are healthy in this lineup, you have a really, really, really good team. Leading off, Tim Anderson at shortstop, very, very good player, great offensive hitter, 300 hitter, all-star, 15 stolen bases, 15 homer kind of guy. Not the best defender at the shortstop position, but he's a great hitter. He's going to be leading off. He's very fast. Luis Robert in center field. 24 homers, 200, near 300 average, can steal 20 bases. He's going to be an X factor for them. They signed Andrew Benintendi, coming over from the Yankees. Had a great year last year, was an all-star. They're projecting him to hit 14 homers with a 270 average. Eloy Jimenez, this guy, talk about unlucky. He got injured a few years ago in spring training, missed half of the season. This is a guy that could hit a 30 homers a season and hit near 280. Yohan Moncada at third. Andrew Vaughn, the Jose Abreu replacement. This guy is an absolute beast at the plate. I mean, he can hit 30 homers easily. Yasmani Grandal is a guy who can just get on base. Despite having one of the lowest averages in the game, he's going to get on base at a very high clip. Gavin Sheets in right and Alvis Andrews in at second base. Their bench has Lurie Garcia and Jake Berger. I like Jake Berger. I got his baseball card actually the other day. And then this rotation is nice too. Dylan Cease finished second in American League Cy Young voting last season. Lance Lynn, Lucas Giolito, Mike Clevenger, and Michael Kopech. This rotation is nice. Luis Giolito's their 3, and he has number 1 stuff. He's been a number 1 a few years ago in his career, had a down year in 2022. This team, their bullpen too, Kendall Graveman, Aaron Bummer, potentially Garrett Crochet. I mean, he's out with Tommy John, and we'll see if Liam Hendriks can come back. He's suffering from some non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, so hopefully he can get through that. That can be a very, very tough one. I have some, I know some people have gone through that, but hopefully he gets better. But this White Sox team, we said this last season, they were supposed to be really, really good, but they have too much talent to be that bad again, to be that disappointing. They have a new manager. Tony La Russa was horrible last season, despite him being a Hall of Fame manager. He was freaking horrible as the White Sox manager last season. But you look at this rotation. I think this is a 5-man rotation that you can count on in a playoff series, right? Cease, Lynn, and Giolito are amazing. Clevenger and Kopech can be really, really on or really, really off. And this lineup, I love the top 6 of this lineup with Anderson, Robert, Benintendi, Jimenez, Moncada, and Vaughn. So I think this White Sox team can win 90-95 games. I think they can challenge the Cleveland Guardians, who I have winning the division. I think they can challenge them, and I think the Chicago team can make the playoffs. Now, coming in first place, I have the Cleveland Guardians. They won 92 games last season, and this year I think they could win up to 95. I think this team, it's going to be about the same team you put out on the field last season, with the additions of Josh Bell and Mike Zunino to the lineup. You got this. Look at this lineup. Steven Kwan leading off. This guy was amazing as a rookie last season. Great defense. A typical leadoff hitter. 300 hitter. Low power. Great contact. Shortstop Ahmed Rosario. Jose Ramirez at third base. He's such an underrated player. I mean, he's easily a top 3 third baseman in the game of baseball. I went to a game this past season when it was a Padres against Guardians game. He hit 2 homers in the game, and there were 2 rows next to me. I was sitting in left field, front row seats in left field. That was freaking sick. But Jose Ramirez hit freaking 2 newts in that game. He's one of the best hitters in baseball. He's a sneaky guy that's going to do a 20-20 season. 20 homers, 20 stolen bases. He usually hits about 30 homers. Josh Bell, new addition. He's either going to be first base or DH. Provides a lot of pop to this lineup. Last season, they were the best contact hitting team in the game, but they weren't able to hit for a lot of power. So Josh Bell, adding him to this team, provides much needed pop. Josh Naylor at first base or that DH position. This is a guy that can hit for power as well. Andres Jimenez at second base, arguably the best second baseman in the game. Gold Glove winner, absolute stud at second base. Oscar Gonzalez in right, Mike Zunino at the catcher position, and Miles Straw in center field. This rotation is good as well. Now, the White Sox might have a better 5-man rotation, but I really, really like this top 2 for Cleveland. You're looking at Shane Bieber, the 2020 AL Cy Young winner, and Tristan McKenzie, who burst onto the scene, finally having a breakout season last year for Cleveland. Cal Quantrill, Aaron Zavala, and Zach Plesac. Real quick, I think Tristan McKenzie, he's my second favorite to win the American League Cy Young next season. My first favorite's Ohtani, but if Ohtani doesn't win Cy Young, or if it's not him, I'm picking Tristan McKenzie to go out there and win the American League Cy Young next season. And this bullpen for Cleveland is arguably the best in the division. Emmanuel Clase, James Karinchak, that guy has so much freaking drip. Trevor Stefan, Sam Henches, Nick Sandlin, Eli Morgan, and Cody Morris, all of those guys are absolute dogs in the rotation. I think this team easily wins 90 to 95 games, and they will have some competition this season. I think Chicago is going to be a true team that's going to definitely give them, some tough times, in Minnesota as well. So that is how I see the AL Central going. Cleveland winning it, making the postseason. Chicago at second place, potentially making a wild card spot. Minnesota at 3, Kansas City, and Detroit Tigers. We're actually going to do the NL Central next week on Monday. My voice is absolutely killing me, so I don't think I could talk about the NL Central for like 20 minutes. So we'll do that next week. We'll be back next week. We'll do 5 podcasts. We'll do Monday through Friday. This week I literally just got back from a trip. Was it this week already? That's freaking crazy. Yeah, this week I got back from a trip. So that is why we had a few days without pods. But we'll be back next week, Monday through Friday. YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TikTok, Instagram, and the website, all in the description. We're working on an MLB preview, an entire article that you can read coming out on the website, hopefully by the end of next week. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode. We'll be back on Monday. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and thank you guys so much. See you later.